Jeff, you got anything in that thermal?
I don't got anything on it, but I'm telling you what.
The Yahoo scream is shocking. We just heard it. It's terrifying.
Moments ago, something extraordinary happened. The quietest man in Appalachian television, Jeff Headlee, the technical genius and historian of mountain monsters, broke years of silence. Viewers expecting another reunion live stream instead watched the screen flicker, the audio distort, and then Jeff's trembling face appear. His eyes were sunken, his voice strained, and behind him, a dim light pulsed against an unrecognizable wall. He didn't open with a greeting. He opened with a warning. They told us we were hunting creatures, but someone, or something, was hunting us. That one sentence sent shockwaves through the mountain monsters community. Within minutes, fans flooded forums and live chats, demanding answers. Was this a stunt? A confession? Or the final chapter in a story that had gone too far? Jeff's hand shook as he adjusted the mic. He looked directly into the camera, his expression breaking between fear and conviction. Then he began to speak, slowly, like a man forcing open a sealed vault of memories he'd sworn never to touch again. He said there were things the world wasn't meant to see, that certain tapes had vanished, certain hunts were erased, and some truths buried by people far above their pay grade. He leaned closer, whispering, "We thought we were making a show about what might be out there in those woods. Turns out the woods were watching us." The live stream cut in and out, but those who heard it knew something seismic had shifted. For years, mountain monsters blurred the line between myth and reality. Tonight, Jeff Headlee tore that line apart. To understand the weight of Jeff's confession, you need to know who he was within the Ames team, the Appalachian investigators of mysterious sightings. While others hunted through the dark forests, Jeff stayed back with the equipment. He was the eye behind the lens, the man recording every rustle, every scream, every unexplained flicker of heat. The others, Trapper, Buck, Huckleberry, Wild Bill, relied on him completely. Jeff's voice rarely rose, but his precision made him the spine of every operation. Fans saw him as the rational one, the historian who kept the team grounded, who'd rather quote folklore archives than charge into the fog with a shotgun. But Jeff's world was built on observation, and he'd seen more than anyone realized. When Mountain Monsters aired, it was pitched as a blend of entertainment and adventure. 6 rugged men chasing Appalachian legends like the Wampus Beast or the Mothman. It became a cult phenomenon, not just for the scares, but for the camaraderie and raw emotion. Yet behind the laughter and chaos, Jeff was collecting data. He wasn't chasing myths. He was building a record. Every taped howl, every unexplained sound wave, every blurred shadow. He logged it all, quietly, obsessively. And according to him, those logs contained far more than the network ever allowed to air. When the series' popularity exploded, producers called the show Folklore with Flair. Jeff called it field research. Tonight, as he spoke to his viewers, his words carried the weight of someone who'd held on to too much for too long. "I tried to move on," he said, "but the silence gets heavier every year." He looked off camera, almost as if checking for approval. Then he added, "This isn't a story. It's evidence." That was when the chat stopped joking. Everyone knew something was wrong. Jeff began recounting events that predated the show itself, what he called the lost hunts. Before the world knew the Ames team, before there were cameras or contracts, there were expeditions no one outside the group had ever heard about. The first was in 2008. The location? An unmarked zone in a remote West Virginia county that didn't appear on any standard maps. Locals called it the hollow that breathes. The Ames team went in with handheld cameras and thermal sensors. What they came out with haunted them for years. Jeff described a cave system unlike anything they'd seen. Symbols carved deep into the limestone, shaped like spirals and arrows that pointed downward. The deeper they went, the colder it became, even though no draft touched their faces. And then, the footprints, massive clawed impressions, but with a disturbing twist. They were almost human, Jeff said. Too wide for boots, too deep for bare feet. The team fled when they heard the first echoing call from within the cave, a sound halfway between a scream and a mechanical grind. They camped nearby that night, shaken, but trying to rationalize it. Then the phone rang. It was a number they didn't recognize. The voice was flat, masculine, almost robotic. "Forget what you saw," it said. "Move on." Then it hung up. The next day they noticed tire marks near their camp. Not theirs. And on the ridge, 2 black SUVs that vanished when they approached. For years, Jeff thought it was coincidence. But when it kept happening, the same vehicles, the same shadow following them in different counties, he realized this wasn't paranoia. He started writing down license plates. He recorded every anomaly. Then, one night, their storage drives were stolen, only hours after capturing footage of a figure moving upright across a distant ridge. No footprints, no explanation. Just gone. Jeff paused during the broadcast, visibly shaken. "That was when I understood," he said quietly. "We weren't just being watched. We were being studied." The chat froze as Jeff moved to the incident that haunted him most, the night he saw the figure. It was 2013, deep in an undisclosed part of West Virginia. The rest of the crew was setting traps, laughing by the campfire. Jeff sat alone inside the monitor tent, eyes fixed on multiple feeds. He adjusted the focus on one night vision camera facing the ridge, and then stopped breathing. Behind Buck and Huckleberry, a shape stood in the shadows. At first he thought it was a crew member, maybe someone crossing behind the scene. But the longer he stared, the less human it appeared. Its shoulders were too narrow. Its arms hung unnaturally long, nearly to its knees, and its head. It tilted slightly, like a predator studying its prey. Jeff froze. He zoomed in. That's when he saw them. Eyes that shimmered like wet glass, reflecting the infrared light directly back at him. He whispered into his mic, trying to warn the others, but before the words left his mouth, the feed glitched. The screen filled with static. Then, black. The file vanished. Not corrupted. Deleted. He tore through the equipment that night, desperate to find a backup. Nothing. The next morning, the production team dismissed it as signal interference. But Jeff knew better. That night, his truck alarm went off 3 times. When he went outside, there was a single handprint smeared across his windshield, far too large to be his. From that day forward, Jeff stopped trusting the system. He began manually backing up footage to encrypted drives. He hid copies across different counties, but within days, one disappeared, and the other was wiped clean. He stopped laughing at trappers' jokes about being on someone's radar, because Jeff had started seeing patterns. The same black SUVs, the same unmarked drones, the same radio interference that silenced their mics mid-recording. He leaned forward in the live stream and whispered, "We thought we were tracking something unnatural. Turns out, something unnatural was tracking us." Jeff's tone shifted. "This part," he said, "is what scared me most." He revealed that Mountain Monsters may never have been just a TV show. It was surveillance disguised as entertainment. After every expedition, producers received encrypted emails marked "Advisory Only," short, cold messages, "Exclude Ridge 9 footage," segment flagged, "Potential interference." None came from the network itself. They came from anonymous outside domains that no one could trace. Whenever Jeff questioned it, meetings were canceled, files disappeared, and archives reappeared mysteriously reformatted. "We'd submit raw footage," he said, "and by morning, half of it would vanish." The others joked that ghosts were deleting their files. Jeff didn't laugh. He said that in every missing clip, one constant appeared, the same heat signature. Humanoid, but not human. Something intelligent, something watching. He called it the pattern. The realization hit like betrayal. "We thought we were documenting the unknown," Jeff murmured, "but the unknown was documenting us." His voice cracked. For the first time that night, he looked genuinely afraid. The silence in the chat was absolute. Jeff then spoke about Trapper, the heart of Ames, the leader who treated every man like a brother. Before his death, Trapper had grown restless, burdened by something he refused to name. He'd stop mid-sentence, Jeff recalled, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then came the letter, mailed from an old P.O. box the team hadn't used in years. Inside was a note in Trapper's slanted handwriting. "Don't trust anyone near the network. They're listening." Alongside it was a folded map, marked with red X's stretching across the Appalachian range. One small circle was labeled The Hollow. Jeff froze when he saw the name. It was a site they had explored years earlier, a sunken pit framed by wooden beams and carved warnings left by settlers. They'd been told never to return. Trapper believed those carvings weren't decoration, Jeff said quietly. They were warnings. Weeks later, Trapper fell ill. Before he was hospitalized, he received several unmarked packages. One contained an old compass that wouldn't point north. Another, a metal tag engraved with the numbers 17-2B. Jeff believed they were messages, subtle threats to stop digging. The night before Trapper's hospitalization, he called Jeff. His voice was weak but steady. "If something happens to me," he whispered, "finish what we started." It was the last time they spoke. At Trapper's memorial, Jeff brought a sealed envelope Trapper had entrusted to him years earlier, marked, "Read only if I don't make it." Inside were tunnel sketches, strange sigils, and one cryptic sentence. "They go deeper than you think." Jeff didn't understand, not until years later, when he found identical carvings deep inside a cave in Kentucky. That was when everything connected. The creatures weren't confined to the surface. There were tunnels, vast, ancient, and possibly man-made. And whatever lived down there had been there far longer than anyone imagined. Jeff's hands trembled as he spoke. After Trapper's death, he began cross-referencing maps, thermal scans, and field notes. He found recurring voids beneath multiple Ames investigation zones, cavern systems stretching miles under the Appalachian range. Each void aligned perfectly with the red X's from Trapper's map. "It wasn't random," Jeff said. "It was a network." He dug deeper. Comparing his data with declassified military archives, he discovered something chilling. The same regions had hosted classified Cold War projects in the 1960s. Biological adaptation, subterranean construction, experimentation in containment environments. The earliest cryptid sightings started the same year, Jeff said, his voice cracking. It wasn't coincidence. It was cause. His theory grew darker with every page. What if the creatures weren't cryptids at all? What if they were the remnants of failed experiments, human but not human, hidden underground and forgotten? He thought back to Trapper's warning. "They go deeper than you think." Jeff lowered his head. "He was right," he whispered. "It wasn't evolution that made them. It was us." The feed glitched briefly, a flash of white static, then steadied again. Jeff stared straight at the lens and said, "And someone still wants them buried." By now, Jeff's breathing was audible. He spoke slower, each word carrying the weight of dread. "You've all heard about the missing tapes from 2016, he said. "They weren't lost. They were taken. Those recordings, he claimed, captured something intelligent, something that could mimic human voices. During one late-night shoot, the team camped near a ridge when distant echoes began calling their names. Buck's name came first, then Huckleberry's. Both men were right beside him. They laughed it off until the next voice called again. Trapper's. But Trapper wasn't even in the state. Jeff described the sound as layered, half digital, half living. Then it laughed, he said softly. Not like a man. Like a broken speaker trying to sound alive. The voice uttered 3 words that would never leave his head. "We remember you." Jeff played the tape for production the next day. Within hours, he was told it was corrupted and ordered destroyed. But he'd already made copies, 7 in total, each containing something stranger. Figures moving in reverse, lights bending the wrong way, and frequencies that matched restricted military channels. One clip showed a flashlight catching two glowing eyes in a hollow tree. When the team approached, it was empty, but the temperature on Jeff's sensors had dropped 20 degrees. "They didn't even try to hide it anymore," he said bitterly. Then he mentioned the envelope, a single printed photo showing the Ames team standing in a field, taken from above. None of them remembered anyone taking it. "That was the moment I realized," Jeff said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This wasn't about legends. It was about control." He claimed 2 of those recordings still exist, hidden in separate states and entrusted to unnamed people. "If anything happens to me," he warned, "they'll go public." The way he said it sent chills through the live chat. You could feel it. This wasn't a performance. It was a man confessing under pressure. Jeff's eyes darkened as he recalled the night that changed everything, the night of the silent grove. "It was winter," he said. "January, 3 below freezing. The kind of cold that bites the air out of your lungs." The Ames team had set up camp in southeastern Ohio, a place locals warned them about. Hunters spoke of strange lights and metallic noises under the soil, but Jeff had insisted they go. They'd filled the perimeter with motion sensors and heat scanners, all linked back to his monitor tent. For hours, nothing happened. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the first sensor tripped, then the next, then the next. They fell like dominoes, one after another, forming a perfect circle around the camp. "I thought it was an animal," Jeff said, "but animals don't move in formation." The feed flickered, showing a heat signature unlike anything he'd seen before, a tall humanoid shape glowing white-hot against the cold. It didn't move. It watched. Jeff yelled for the others. Buck shouted into the darkness. Huckleberry raised his light, but the creature stayed still, its head tilting just slightly, like it was studying them. Then every mic, every sensor, every battery-powered camera died at once. No power surge, no malfunction, just silence. Even the forest seemed to stop breathing. "I could feel it in my chest," Jeff said, like the ground itself was alive. He described hearing a deep, rhythmic vibration, almost like a pulse, rising from beneath the soil. It wasn't sound, he explained. It was pressure, the kind that makes your bones ache. The team swept the ridge with flashlights. Where the sensors had tripped, the snow was scorched in perfect rings, dark ash in the center, untouched snow at the edges. Huckleberry found footprints nearby, 3-toed, massive, ending abruptly in open ground, as if the creature had simply vanished. Jeff tried to document it all, but when he checked his camera, the memory card displayed one message: format error. When dawn broke, the team packed up in silence. Days later, Jeff returned to the same ridge and froze. The trees were gone, the land fenced off. A new metal sign read, "Property of the U.S. Geological Survey." But that ridge wasn't federal land before. "Somebody changed the paperwork," Jeff said, his voice shaking. "Right after we left." From that day on, Jeff stopped trusting digital records. He started logging everything by hand, notes, maps, sketches, like an old-world explorer trapped in a modern conspiracy. "The forest isn't empty at night," he said. "It's awake, and it knows we're there." After the silent grove, Jeff knew he couldn't rely on producers, law enforcement, or even his own teammates. It wasn't paranoia anymore, he said. It was survival. He began compiling what he called the Ames Legacy File, a digital archive of every hunt, every unexplained anomaly, and every buried clue they'd ever uncovered. He encrypted it across multiple drives, programming them with a dead man's switch. "If anything happens to me," he said, "it'll unlock itself and send copies everywhere." When rumors of the file reached fan forums, former crew members began confirming odd events, segments that were cut, unexplained visits from consultants, and technical audits no one had requested. Jeff's sources whispered that these weren't TV executives. They were outside observers. He pulled out one document during the stream, a redacted memo he said came from inside the production network. 3 phrases stood out: environmental secrecy agreements, unauthorized archaeological exposure. Do not escalate public disclosure. Those words don't belong in a monster hunting show, Jeff said. His theory evolved. The Appalachian wilderness wasn't hiding cryptids. It was hiding government experiments, biological trials buried beneath folklore. The show had stumbled onto something real, and someone had used mountain monsters to monitor it under the guise of television. Then came the package that confirmed everything. One morning, Jeff found a large manila envelope on his porch, no return address. Inside was a flash drive. The footage on it was old, grainy, and stamped with a 1958 timestamp. Men in hazmat suits carried a long, human-shaped form wrapped in tarp through a tunnel system. On the wall behind them were the same spiral symbols Jeff and Trapper had documented years later. He froze. That was the confirmation I needed, he whispered. Whatever we found, it wasn't new. From that moment, Jeff stopped treating their discoveries as folklore and started treating them as evidence of history deliberately erased. He said he'd matched coordinates from Trapper's map to declassified testing grounds used by the U.S. military during Cold War biological experiments. It's all connected, he said, his eyes red. The tunnels, the experiments, the things we saw, they were built, not born. He paused for a long time, then added, Trapper always said the biggest monsters wear suits. Jeff said there was one piece left, Trapper's final envelope. Inside were GPS coordinates and a handwritten note. For when you're ready. For years, Jeff avoided them. Then one foggy spring morning, he decided to go. The location was deep in West Virginia, beyond paved roads, past rusted fences and overgrown trails. He hiked alone, carrying only a flashlight, notebook, and his old camera. The coordinates led to a narrow cave mouth half hidden by vines. Inside, he found a tunnel sloping down into darkness. The air was stale, heavy, he said, like it hadn't been disturbed in centuries. 30 feet in, his light caught metallic glints on the wall, symbols identical to those on Trapper's map. The deeper he went, the more unnatural it became. The walls changed from limestone to something smooth, manufactured, like melted steel fused with rock. And then he saw it, a curved structure embedded in the stone, half buried, humming faintly as if alive. Jeff took photos, but something felt wrong. The temperature rose sharply, his camera flickered, and he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate. When he turned, no one was there. He fled the cave, heart pounding. On the drive home, he noticed headlights trailing him, the same black van he'd seen near Ames headquarters years before. It followed him for nearly 30 miles, never overtaking, never dropping back. When he turned onto an unmarked service road, it vanished. That was the night Jeff realized he wasn't uncovering a mystery anymore. He was surviving one. He spent months trying to trace the cave's coordinates through geological records, but the site didn't exist in any official database. It's like the land was erased, he said, as if someone rewrote the earth. Jeff's final words on the subject were almost reverent. Trapper was right, he said softly. The monsters weren't what we thought. The real ones were the people who made them, and the ones who made sure we'd never tell. By the time Jeff went live for what fans now call the final broadcast, he looked exhausted. His beard was grayer, his voice lower, and the spark in his eyes replaced with something heavier. Resignation. He began by thanking the viewers who had stayed with the Ames family through every storm, every scare, every loss. You kept the brotherhood alive, he said. Then he paused. But there's one last thing you need to know. He revealed that new activity had started in their old hunting grounds. Lights moving through the trees, radio interference matching the same frequencies from 2016. And in several of those locations, locals reported hearing familiar voices calling their names, Trappers among them. I don't think it's over, Jeff said. Whatever's down there, it remembers us. He warned fans not to go looking for those places. If you hear something that sounds like me, he said grimly, run the other way. Then his tone softened. Trapper died chasing the truth, he said. The least I can do is make sure it's not buried with him. He promised that if anything ever happened to him, his encrypted drives would unlock automatically. The files, the maps, the tapes. You'll see everything, he said. And maybe then you'll understand what we were really fighting. He looked off camera, as if distracted by a noise, then smiled faintly. If this video disappears, he said, remember, truth always finds a way back. Seconds later, the feed glitched. The chat exploded with question marks. Then the live stream ended abruptly. His channel vanished within the hour. Days later, locals claimed to see unfamiliar vehicles parked near the old Ames base. Others swore they saw a man who looked like Jeff in the woods, holding a flashlight, before fading into the fog. No one's seen him since, but his words echo still. For some, the hunt never ended. It just went underground. Jeff Headlee's disappearance didn't silence the legend, it reignited it. Across forums and podcasts, new hunters trade theories, dissecting every frame of his final stream. Was it government interference, paranormal retaliation, or something older, waiting beneath the soil? Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. The world of mountain monsters will never be the same. If you believe there's more to this story, stay with us. In our next episode, we'll break down the hidden footage Jeff hinted still exists and the real coordinates to the hollow. Because sometimes, legends don't die. They wait. Like, share, and subscribe if you're ready to go deeper. Because after tonight, you'll never look at the Appalachian wilderness the same way again.